What's up, guys? We all know the standard NFL penalties: holding, offside, pass interference, roughing the passer, and so on. But there are some existing penalties in the NFL rulebook that many of you don't know about. That's because either A, they're almost never called, B, they haven't been called in years, or C, they've never been called in the history of the NFL, even though they're clearly written in the rulebook. So let us increase your knowledge with the NFL rulebook. I'm Jason Biondo, and today we're explaining 10 penalties or rules that the league has just in case a complex situation arises. Subscribe to TPS because we post videos all the time. New videos all the time. Sports content. If you like sports content, subscribe. Number 10. No back-to-back timeouts between one play. Rule 4 of the NFL rulebook details game timing, intermissions, scheduling, timeouts, and so on. Item 3, Article 1 under Section 5, timeouts, outlines that both teams may be granted a charged team timeout during the same dead ball period. However, neither team is allowed to call a second timeout during the same dead ball period. If a team is permitted a second timeout in the second dead ball period, they are hit with a 5-yard penalty. So NFL officials have to pay close attention and make sure they don't accidentally grant a second timeout on the same dead ball period. The rulebook also says that a penalty should only be called if the official erroneously grants a timeout. This is why you don't get back-to-back timeouts on icing the kicker plays. Thankfully, coaches can only slow down the pace of play so much. Number 9, go out of bounds, get back in bounds during kickoffs. Rule 9 details with kicks from scrimmage, touching a kick from scrimmage, recovering kicks from scrimmage, and so on. But Rule 12 deals with player conduct. To find this little-known rule about going out of bounds during kickoffs, we have to dive all the way into Article 1 of Section 3, which outlines unsportsmanlike conduct. Point 5 out of Article 1 details that if a player on the kicking team is forced or voluntarily goes out of bounds and they don't attempt to get back in bounds in a reasonable amount of time, it's a 15-yard unsportsmanlike penalty. The penalty will be enforced from either the succeeding spot if the ball is dead or the previous spot if the ball was in play. The player can also be disqualified if the penalty was blatant. Number 8, leverage leaping on the field goal attempts. Blocking field goals is an extremely difficult task in the NFL, and it only works every so often. It used to be fun when teams would push their teammates into the scrum in hopes of blocking a field goal. Seeing players jump over the scrum in order to block an attempt was also pretty cool and all. But the NFL doesn't allow those maneuvers anymore. Rule 14 deals with penalty enforcement. In Article 8 of Rule 14, it details that players are barred from leverage leaping and pushing teammates into the offensive formation during a field goal attempt. If a player commits such an action, then the penalty is enforced as if it had been in possession of the ball at the time the foul occurred, so long as the receiving team didn't lose possession of the football during the play. You may recall a 2013 game between the New York Jets and New England Patriots where Nick Folk missed a game-winning field goal in overtime. However, Chris Jones of the Patriots was hit with an unsportsmanlike penalty for pushing his teammate in the scrum on the play. Folk got a second chance and made good on the field goal, giving the Jets a confusing victory. This was a new rule that was put into place just before the 2013 season, and it was introduced to enhance player safety. That was the first time the penalty had been called as well, and it couldn't have come at a better time for the Jets, or a worse time for the Patriots. Number 7, delayed spiking of the football. Rule 8 deals with forward passes, backward passes, and fumbles. Section 2 outlines the rules for intentional grounding. Scroll down to Item 4 of Article 1, and you'll see where the quarterback can be penalized for a delayed spike. The rule states that the quarterback shall be penalized if he delays the passing action for strategic purposes, even if they're not being pressured by a defensive player. If they delay the spike for strategic reasons, the quarterback will be hit with a 15-yard penalty. So for example, a quarterback can't take the snap, pretend they'll throw it, and then spike it. The fake spike, a la Dan Marino and Ben Roethlisberger, however, is legal. Caleb Haney did this in a 2011 game between the Chicago Bears and Oakland Raiders. The visiting Bears trailed 25-20 in the waning seconds. He needed to spike it right away so the Bears could attempt a Hail Mary, but he delayed the spike for about 1.5 seconds and was hit with an intentional grounding penalty. That caused a 10-second runoff and the Bears lost. Caleb, buddy, just fake it. Number 6, violating uniform rules. Rule 5 details players, substitutes, equipment, and general rules. Section 4 outlines all of the basic uniform rules that players must follow. It says that a player's jersey must be tucked into the pants throughout the entire contest. Not only that, but the stockings have to cover the entire area from the shoe to the bottom of the pants. Bandanas are forbidden as well. Good thing Deion Sanders played in an era when they were allowed. If If a player violates any of the NFL's uniform rules, they aren't permitted to go back into the game until the problem is corrected. If a player is breaking a uniform rule and they go back into the game after receiving another warning, their team will be hit with a 5-yard penalty. They can also be subject to hefty fines. Number 5. Roughing the snapper. Long snappers have always been in dangerous positions, with their head and neck areas being exposed while they snap the field goal or punt attempt. The league decided to issue more safety precaution for long snappers. Now the NFL didn't officially put a new rule in the book, but ahead of the 2018 season, the league said they'd be calling a 15-yard penalty on players who make contact with a long snapper in his head or neck area. The penalty won't be called that often, but it's obviously important to keep those long snappers safe. Number 4. Coaches challenge when out of challenges and timeouts. As you all know, head coaches are given 2 challenges every game. The rules are simple. They cannot challenge after the 2-minute warnings in the second and fourth quarters. If a coach wins his 2 initial challenges, he'll be awarded the third. But what happens if a coach throws the red flag when he's out of challenges? The rulebook outlines that he'll be charged a timeout. If a coach throws the challenge flag when he's out of challenges and timeouts, then it's a 15-yard penalty. So it's not a good idea for a coach to try and create a diversion and stall for time when he knows he's out of challenges and timeouts, in case you were wondering. Number 3. Excessive crowd noise. There are a million ways you can argue that the NFL is the best pro sports league in North America. One thing we love about it, the fans legitimately make a difference when it comes to supporting their team. Thunderous crowd noise is a major disadvantage for away teams, and the offensive players struggle to get on the same page when it comes to calling audibles. But you can also cite a strange rule as another example of the NFL being a no-fun league when it comes to crowd noise. There's been a rule in place where teams could be punished if the crowd noise was too excessive. Seriously, in a 1997 game at the Silverdome between the home team Detroit Lions and visiting New York Jets, the crowd got absolutely rowdy. The officials stopped the game and warned the nearly 78,000 in attendance that the Lions would be charged with a timeout if the excessive crowd noise continued.
The noise persists. The defense will be charged with a timeout.
7 years earlier, a similar incident took place when the Kansas City Chiefs hosted John Elway's Denver Broncos. The officials warned the KC faithful that their team would be charged with a timeout if the noise didn't quiet down.
Any further crowd noise problem will result in a charged timeout against Kansas City.
In 2012, it was reported that the NFL decided to go easier on crowd noise rules so that they could make game experiences more fun for the fans. Good, because there was a time where you had to wonder if the NFL was going to take a page from tennis and just ban crowd noise altogether. Number 2, delaying the coin toss. Like every football fan, NFL officials are anxious to get the games going. Why do the coin tosses take place so quickly? Especially between the fourth quarter and overtime, because the NFL rulebook forces teams to be ready to meet midfield almost immediately. Articles 1 and 2 in Section 2 of Rule 4 outline that teams must be on the field at least 10 minutes before the kickoff. If a team causes a delay in starting the half, they'll be hit with a 15-yard penalty from the spot of the kickoff. If any team shows up late for the first half, they're automatically deemed losers of the coin toss for both halves as well as overtime. Not only that, but they'll also be given a 15-yard penalty from the spot of the kickoff. As you know, most teams that win the coin toss for overtime would rather start with the ball. Imagine losing a game because you were late for a coin toss and the other team was granted first possession in overtime and they went down to score. Yeah, thankfully teams aren't silly enough to take such a careless penalty. Here's another interesting penalty that can somewhat factor into a coin toss that we'll bring up just for the fun of it. It involves forfeiting. Rule 11 is the most basic by far in the NFL's rulebook. It outlines scoring and simply explains how many points touchdowns, field goals, and safeties are worth. It also outlines what a touchdown is. And blah blah blah, you know all of this. But Article 1 of Rule 11 is something interesting that many of you probably never knew about. That's because it has never once been enforced in the history of the NFL. The rule outlines that if a team has to forfeit a game, the final score shall be declared 2-0 for the winning club. And if a team wins by forfeit, it comes with disadvantages. Those 2 points will not count towards stats, so they wouldn't come into effect for a potential tiebreaker. So teams better show up to the coin toss, or else. Number 1, Palpably Unfair Act. The point of this rule is to prevent teams from performing unsportsmanlike and unfair acts on the field. It's outlined in Rule 17 of the NFL rulebook, which focuses on emergencies and unfair acts. In Article 3 of Section 2 in Rule 17, outlines that the NFL commissioner has the power to do any of the following if a player or team commits an unfair act: hand out fines and/or draft pick forfeitures, suspensions, reverse the result of game, order the game to be replayed entirely, have a game restart start from the point of an unfair act. So in short, Commissioner Roger Goodell could completely change the outcome of a game if he found a team committed a very unsportsmanlike action. This rule has never been enforced in the history of the NFL, but it may have pointed out some examples in which the commissioner should have done so. This would include the 2018 NFC Championship game between the Los Angeles Rams and New Orleans Saints, where the refs missed a blatant PI call that would have sent Drew Brees and company to the Super Bowl. Instead, the NFL was hit with lawsuits, and a Louisiana judge decided that Goodell and game officials must answer questions under oath regarding the bad call. And of course, there was the 2013 Thanksgiving game between the Baltimore Ravens and Pittsburgh Steelers, where Mike Tomlin interfered on a Jacoby Jones kickoff return. The Ravens wound up winning the game anyway, and Tomlin was hit with a $100,000 fine. This rule means teams cannot perform overly crazy and slimy cheating stunts. Let's just hope no NFL commissioner ever has to enforce this rule. That'd be a bad look on absolutely everybody. What other penalties does the NFL have just in case? Join me in the comment section below. Make sure to follow myself and TPS on social media. We post great content all the time. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. I post videos all the time as well. Subscribe to TPS because we post videos all the time. New videos all the time. Sports content. If you like sports content, subscribe. If you like this video, give it a like. It takes one click right down below, and we really appreciate it. It will really help us out. It'd be so nice of you. Please do it. Of course, thank you so much for watching. I'm Jason Biondo. I'll see you next time.
My knee.